Hey everybody, you know there's places on the Earth so secretive, so heavily guarded that even standing near their perimeter can get you arrested? Or worse? From secret Hawaiian islands to heavily fortified military facilities, here's 15 places that you can't visit without government permissions. Starting with number 15, Diego Garcia. In the Indian Ocean is Diego Garcia. It's an island that kind of looks like a tropical paradise, but it's anything but welcoming. Officially part of the British Indian Ocean Territory, Diego Garcia has no hotels, no infrastructure, and no civilian population. It's home to one of the most secretive and strategically important U.S. military bases in the world, and despite its appearance, turquoise waters, palm-fringed beaches, and a coral atoll setting, the entry here is completely forbidden to civilians. Not even British citizens who technically own the island can even access it without permission. The history of it is murky and controversial. In the 1960s and early 70s, the British government forcibly removed the native population to make way for a U.S. military installation. These people, who had lived in the island for generations, were relocated to Mauritius and the Seychelles in what was effectively a coerced exile. Their displacement has since been the subject of lawsuits and human rights campaigns. And despite multiple legal rulings in their favor, the Chagosians have never been allowed to return. Today, the island has Naval Support Facility Diego Garcia. That's a joint U.S.-British installation that includes airfields, deep-sea ports, satellite stations, and pre-positioned military hardware. It's played a role in multiple U.S. military ops, including the Gulf War, the Iraq invasion, and the Afghanistan conflict. Bombers, surveillance aircraft, and cargo planes frequently operate out of the island. The base is so secure that no civilian flights are allowed anywhere near it. There's no commercial port access either, and the island's patrolled by military personnel, and its airstrip, long enough to accommodate the largest aircraft in the U.S. fleet, is off-limits to any unauthorized visitors. Satellite images show a sprawling base with radar arrays, runways, fuel depots, and rows of hidden structures, but the full extent of their operations remains classified. The island's been rumored to serve as a refueling station for nuclear-capable bombers and submarines, though these claims have never been officially confirmed, and the island's extreme secrecy only fuels speculation. From a legal standpoint, though, the sovereignty of Diego Garcia is still contested. In 2019, the International Court of Justice ruled that the UK must end its control over the Chagos archipelago and return it to Mauritius. The United Nations General Assembly passed a similar resolution, yet the British government, backed by the US, has refused to comply. As a result, Diego Garcia remains both a diplomatic flashpoint and a physical no-go zone for virtually everyone, except those working on top-secret military missions. Number 14. The Bohemian Grove. In the redwood forests of Monterey, California, Bohemian Grove isn't a military installation nor a government bunker, but it may be even harder to get into. This 2,700-acre private campground is owned by the Bohemian Club, an ultra-exclusive organization whose members include some of the world's most powerful businessmen, politicians, and cultural icons. Each summer for over a century, the Grove hosts a 2-week gathering that's strictly off-limits to the public, journalists, and even most government oversight. The location has been the subject of countless rumors and, of course, conspiracy theories, but much of its secrecy is simply the result of its exclusivity. The Bohemian Club was founded in San Francisco in 1872 as a meeting place for artists, journalists, and writers. Over time, it attracted members from the upper echelons of American society, including presidents, CEOs, and defense officials. Attending the Grove is now considered a rite of passage for those at the highest levels of influence. Security is, of course, tight. Armed guards patrol the perimeter, surveillance cameras dot the redwood trees. Invitations are nearly impossible to come by unless you're already a member or a high-ranking guest. Even the press is barred entirely, and those who try to sneak in are swiftly escorted out or arrested. Inside, the club's motto, "Weaving spiders come not here," reflects the culture of extreme privacy. Members will gather around massive bonfires, engage in performances, and relax in rustic cabins far away from any public scrutiny. There's of course no cell service, no press releases, and no recording equipment allowed. While some attendees claim the retreat is purely social, others point to decades of informal political conversations that have taken place there. Past attendees have included U.S. presidents like Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon, cabinet members, and Fortune 500 executives. The Manhattan Project, the program that developed the first atomic bomb, was reportedly first discussed informally among scientists and government officials at Bohemian Grove. Despite all the mystery though, it's not a government facility, but it is protected by layers of private influence and money, making it just as inaccessible. Attempts to document what happens inside have resulted in a few verifiable details. The rituals known as hijinks and cremation of care are performed in costume and reportedly symbolic, but to outsiders they remain bizarre and unexplained. No public access is allowed at any time. Even local residents and California officials don't have jurisdiction within the Grove during its peak weeks. It remains an island of elite privacy in the middle of public land, one that exists entirely behind a wall of wealth, secrecy, and influence. Number 13. Room 39 in the Workers' Party Building in North Korea. Room 39, also known as Bureau 39, is one of the most secretive entities in one of the world's most closed-off nations, North Korea. Tucked away inside the Workers' Party Building in central Pyongyang, this office is believed to be the nerve center for managing the personal wealth of the ruling Kim family. Despite decades of speculation, almost nothing about its inner workings have been confirmed, and absolutely no foreigner without elite clearance has ever set foot inside. Founded in the 1970s, Room 39 is said to operate under the direct control of North Korea's ruling regime. While the official purpose of the office remains undisclosed, intelligence reports from defectors, South Korean agencies, and international watchdogs suggest it plays a critical role in generating foreign currency through a complex web of legal and illegal means. The building that houses Room 39 itself is a nondescript structure within the heavily guarded compound of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea. This area is off-limits to the public, diplomats, and even many high-ranking North Korean officials. Entry requires multiple layers of clearance, and only those in Kim Jong-un's inner circle would even know what goes on behind the steel-reinforced doors. Some believe Room 39 controls up to $5 billion in slush funds, helping the regime weather sanctions and fund military and nuclear programs. This office is suspected of maintaining secret bank accounts in China, Southeast Asia, and Europe, often under fake names and shell corporations. And despite repeated sanctions by the United Nations and U.S. Treasury, Room 39 continues to operate in the shadows. The room itself may not even be a room in the literal sense. It's more likely a nickname for an entire department operating across multiple offices. The exact number of personnel is unknown, but estimates say it could employ hundreds of operatives, all sworn to absolute secrecy. No international body has ever inspected Room 39, and no satellite images can offer insight into what's happening in there. And even among North Korean defectors, very few have first-hand knowledge of it. In the world of geopolitical secrecy, Room 39 is a unique place. It's not a military base, nor a nuclear lab, yet it may be more powerful than either. It exists solely to sustain the regime, fund its elite, and outmaneuver global sanctions. Number 12. Fort Dietrich, U.S. Amrid, Maryland. Fort Dietrich in Frederick, Maryland appears on the surface to be just another U.S. Army base, but behind its fence lies one of the most secretive biomedical facilities in the world, the United States Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases, U.S. Amrid. This top-tier lab handles some of the deadliest biological agents on the planet, from anthrax and Ebola to engineered viral strains you've never heard of and you never want to encounter. U.S. Amrid is the U.S. military's lead institution for medical biological defense. It's where America studies pathogens that could be weaponized or unleashed. Scientists here wear pressurized suits and they work in BSL-4 containment labs. That's the highest level of biosafety known, where a breach could have catastrophic consequences. And because of that, security here is intense. Unauthorized visitors are strictly prohibited, and even base personnel have limited access to certain buildings depending on their clearance. The installation's history stretches back to the early days of the Cold War. Fort Dietrich was once the epicenter of America's offensive biological weapons program, before President Nixon officially shut it down in 1969. Since then, it's focused exclusively on defense measures, developing vaccines, detection systems, and emergency protocols in a disaster. But history has made it a target of conspiracy theories and intense secrecy. Entering U.S. Amrid is a process layered with clearance levels, biometric scans, escort-only protocols, and pre-approval by federal agencies. Even other branches of the military can't just simply walk in. The facility is ringed by fencing, cameras, and restricted airspace. Drone activity is of course prohibited, and photography is not allowed near most of the perimeter. In 2019, the CDC temporarily shut down certain labs at US AMRID over biosafety violations, showing the extreme risk posed by even minor procedural errors. The labs resumed operations in 2020, but the event underscored why access must remain so tightly restricted. The facility's also been involved in some high-profile investigations, such as the anthrax mailings that followed 9/11, and one of US AMRID's own scientists was eventually identified as the likely perpetrator, adding even more controversy and mystery to its name. Today, Fort Dietrich continues to support national defense. Its scientists contribute to disease surveillance, emergency response training, and the development of medical countermeasures. But for all its importance, it remains the place that the average citizen will never see, and perhaps you shouldn't. The combination of lethal agents, cutting-edge research, and global security risks makes US AMRID one of the most inaccessible places in the United States. Number 11. Area R, Saudi Royal Court Complex, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Behind layers of concrete walls, security checkpoints, and private roads in the heart of Riyadh is one of the most impenetrable places in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Area R, the nickname for the Royal Court Complex. This zone isn't marked on tourist maps or signposted on roads. Its layout is largely invisible to the public, but its importance is unquestionable. It's here that the King and Crown Prince conduct state business, meet foreign dignitaries, and oversee military, economic, and internal affairs in total secrecy. Saudi Arabia is an absolute monarchy with tightly centralized power. The royal court, known as the Diwan al-Malaki, functions as both the nerve center of the government and the private headquarters of the House of Saud. Area R is not merely an administrative building, it's a secure mini-city within Riyadh. And access is limited to top-ranking royals, hand-picked advisors, and carefully vetted security forces. But what makes it uniquely inaccessible is the combination of political, cultural, and security restrictions. In a country where dissent is heavily suppressed and media is tightly controlled, the inner workings of the royal court are a state secret. Even high-level ministers operate on a need-to-know basis and only interact with the royal family at the court's discretion. Entry into Area R without any authorization is unthinkable. There is no known photos or videos from inside, and aerial or satellite imagery is heavily censored or blurred. Roads approaching Area R are patrolled by special police, and the surrounding districts have restricted airspace. Foreign delegations that visit are closely monitored and never allowed free access. Even contractors and workers brought in for construction or maintenance are subjected to intense background checks, and their presence is temporary and heavily supervised. What happens in Area R influences not just the governance of Saudi Arabia, but the global oil economy and Middle Eastern geopolitics. It is where the most sensitive decisions are made regarding OPEC oil production, national defense, royal succession, and diplomatic strategy. The recent Vision 2030 reforms, championed by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, were designed and managed from within this complex. Area R, it sits in plain sight in Riyadh, but it might as well be on another planet in terms of access. For most Saudis, it remains a symbol of power and secrecy, a place they'll never see and can never enter. It's one of the most politically significant, yet physically unreachable places on the planet. Number 10. The CocaCola Vault, Atlanta, Georgia. Deep inside the World of Coca-Cola Museum in downtown Atlanta sits one of the most famous and curious secrets in the corporate world, the vault that holds the original Coca-Cola recipe. Known simply as the Vault, this heavily protected chamber houses what may be one of the most closely guarded industrial secrets in history. And despite being surrounded by glass exhibits, touchscreen panels, and tourists, you're not allowed anywhere near the actual recipe. The formula for Coca-Cola, first created by pharmacist John S. Pemberton in 1886, has been protected for over a century. It's so valuable that only a handful of executives at any given time know its full contents. These individuals are not allowed to travel together, and their identities are not disclosed publicly. The idea is that no single person outside this small group could ever reproduce the beverage in its exact original form. The CocaCola Vault isn't just a marketing gimmick, it is a real restricted access security installation. The actual recipe is said to be written on paper and stored in a steel box behind a door that requires multiple forms of biometric authentication. While tourists can see the outer vault and enjoy interactive exhibits about Coca-Cola's history, they're always kept at a distance from the real prize. Over the years, many have tried to guess or recreate the recipe, claiming to detect subtle combinations of cinnamon, nutmeg, neroli oil, and even more. Some claim to have found the old recipe notes, others assert that Coke's formula has changed anyway due to ingredient availability and regional preferences. But the company insists the core recipe remains unchanged and still draws from that original handwritten note. So why does the secrecy persist? Well, beyond brand mystique, the Coca-Cola formula is a cornerstone of one of the most profitable consumer brands on Earth. Coca-Cola's flavor is what separates it from a sea of imitators, and revealing its secrets could jeopardize its market dominance. You won't find the Coca-Cola Vault on a list of military installations or nuclear sites, but the access restrictions are just as real. For anyone hoping to crack open the vault and peek inside, the answer is simple: you can't. It's a modern corporate temple, built not to inspire through power, but to protect a flavor that billions around the world instantly recognize. Number 9. Pine Gap, Joint Defence Facility, Australia. In the Australian outback, surrounded by miles of desert and protected by layers of security, is Pine Gap, a facility so secretive that even most Australians know little about it. Officially called the Joint Defence Facility Pine Gap, it's located just outside the town of Alice Springs, and it's run jointly by the United States and Australian governments. It plays a huge role in global surveillance, satellite tracking, and military intelligence, and access to Pine Gap is tightly restricted. The perimeter is monitored by ground sensors, motion detectors, cameras, and patrols, and the airspace above it is off limits too, so drones are jammed or even intercepted, and only a small group of authorized personnel, mostly intelligence officers, military contractors, are even allowed inside. No public tours, no journalists, no unauthorized photography. Built in the 1960s during the Cold War, Pine Gap was initially intended to help the U.S. track Soviet missile launches, but over time its capability expanded drastically. Today, it hosts ground stations for U.S. spy satellites that monitor communications, missile launches, and electronic signals. The core of their operations lies beneath the radomes, those giant white spheres that shield satellite dishes from public view. Inside, teams work 24/7 monitoring data streams, some of which are believed to support U.S. drone operations in the Middle East and Africa. Leaked documents from Edward Snowden revealed that Pine Gap is deeply integrated into the Five Eyes intelligence alliance, sharing information between the US, UK, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. In recent years, the base has grown in strategic value too. As tensions rise in the Indo-Pacific region, Pine Gap has become essential. Its role in missile defense, space surveillance, and cyber intelligence continues to expand, yet its public profile remains intentionally low. It represents the modern face of restricted access. It's not hidden behind jungles or inside a palace. It just sits there in plain sight, surrounded by the desert. Yet its secrets are just as well guarded as any Cold War bunker. No tourist is ever going to see in there. No camera will ever capture its operations. It is a place where technology, secrecy, and geopolitics converge. And unless you're part of a very small circle of insiders, you're never going to get closer than the gates. Number 8. CSI Island, Iceland. Off the south coast of Iceland, rising out of the Atlantic Ocean, is CSI Island. It's a place so unique and valuable that no ordinary person is even allowed to set foot on it. It was formed by a volcanic eruption in 1963. CSI is one of the youngest islands on the planet and is considered a living laboratory for study of natural ecological succession. The island emerged dramatically from the sea following a 4-year-long volcanic event that created a brand new landmass. Icelandic authorities quickly realized its scientific potential, and rather than opening it to tourism or development, the government designated CSI as a strict nature reserve. Even scientists have to follow stringent protocols: no foreign species, no human waste, no food packaging. The goal? Preserve the island in its most untouched, pristine form. The importance of this island lies in the role as a control site to study how life colonizes new land. Over the decades, scientists have carefully documented the arrival of mosses, lichens, birds, and even insects blown in by the wind or carried in on driftwood. Eventually, seals and puffins joined, followed by more complex vegetation. Every plant that grows there, every insect that takes root, does so without any human intervention. That makes Surtsey one of the most important places in the world for understanding how ecosystems evolve. Visiting here without a permit is illegal and heavily enforceable. Surveillance flights and patrol boats from the Icelandic Coast Guard monitor the waters, and even nearby fishermen are required to keep a distance. In 2008, UNESCO declared it a World Heritage Site, which further sealed its protected status. Despite all this, though, it continues to be a source of curiosity. Its story is told in museums and documentaries and scientific journals, but the island itself remains untouched. This is a rare example of Earth allowed to develop in total isolation. Surtsey is kind of a paradox. It's a wild, beautiful island that most people will never see with their own eyes. It's not protected for reasons of secrecy or military control, but rather for the sake of knowledge. In an age of environmental destruction, Surtsey stands as an example to what the planet looks like when we leave it alone. But if you want to visit, don't bother applying. Unless you're a vetted ecologist with a government-backed research mission, you'll have to admire it from afar. Moving on to number 7, Porton Down in Wiltshire, United Kingdom. In the countryside of Wiltshire in England lies Porton Down. It's one of the world's most secretive government research facilities. It's officially known as the Defense Science and Technology Laboratory. Porton Down has operated since 1916 and remains strictly off-limits to the public. Its purpose? Research and development in chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear defense. But its shadowy history and near-total secrecy have long made it a source of intense curiosity and conspiracy. Porton Down was established during World War I to counter the growing threat of chemical warfare. It was initially focused on studying chlorine and mustard gas. It later expanded to include biological pathogens like anthrax and the plague. Over the decades, its mandate has grown to cover defensive capabilities against everything from bioterrorism to pandemics. But one of the most troubling chapters in its history, though, involves human testing. Between the 1940s and 1980s, hundreds, possibly thousands of British servicemen were exposed to nerve agents and other chemicals in experiments that were shrouded in secrecy. Some claim they weren't fully informed of the dangers, and in 2006 the UK Ministry of Defence awarded compensation to the family of Ronald Madison, a serviceman who died during a sarin gas trial in 1953. The case brought renewed attention to Porton Down's ethical track record. Today, though, Porton Down employs about 3,000 people, scientists, technicians, and it makes it one of the largest science parks in the UK. Much of its work supports the British military, Homeland Security, and public health agencies. For example, during the 2018 Salisbury poisoning incident involving former Russian spy Sergei Skripal, scientists at Porton Down were tasked with identifying the Novichok nerve agent used in the attack. It remains a center of excellence for chemical and biological threat response. Even academics and journalists require special security clearance here, and their visits, if permitted, are highly restricted. A section of the surrounding land has even been sealed off due to lingering contamination from decades of experiments. Despite numerous Freedom of Information requests, little is known about the full extent of Porton Down's research. The UK government continues to treat it as a vital asset in the age of biosecurity and international espionage. For this reason, though, it remains one of the most scientifically important, yet physically inaccessible sites in Britain. Number 6. Nihao Hawaii in the United States. Found just 17 miles off the coast of Kauai in the Hawaiian archipelago sits Nihao. It's often referred to as Forbidden Island. Unlike the rest of Hawaii, which welcomes millions of people, Nihao is entirely closed to the general public. It's owned by the Robinson family since 1864. The island's home to a small native Hawaiian population, and it operates under a strict no-visitor policy, unless you have explicit government or private permission. This island is the smallest of Hawaii's inhabited islands, spanning just 70 square miles. It's got no paved roads, no hotels, and no power grid. Its population, estimated at fewer than 100 people, lives without many modern conveniences. Most speak Hawaiian as their primary language, and they rely on subsistence fishing and farming, alongside occasional work on neighboring islands. In 1864, Elizabeth Sinclair, a Scottish woman with deep missionary ties to the islands, purchased it from King Kamehameha for $10,000 in gold. As part of the agreement, she and her descendants promised to preserve Hawaiian culture and protect the island from outside influence. The Robinson family, her descendants, has honored the pact more than a century, maintaining Nihao as a cultural sanctuary free from modern tourism, commercial development, or heavy oversight. The U.S. government has acknowledged this autonomy to an unusual degree, too. During World War II, the island was the site of the Nihao incident, in which a downed Japanese fighter pilot crash-landed on the island following the Pearl Harbor attack. The event exposed tensions with Hawaii's Japanese-American population and led to greater government surveillance. Despite this, though, the Robinson family resumed control of the island shortly after the war. Today, visitors are not allowed to step foot on it without invitation. Even Hawaiian citizens and journalists are typically denied access. A few helicopter tours fly over the island, but landings are restricted. In rare cases, government officials, environmental researchers, or members of the military are granted permission, but these visits are usually for operational purpose, not public interest. The U.S. government recognizes the island as private property, but there's also a deeply embedded social contract that prioritizes the preservation of native Hawaiian language and independence. Nihao is one of the last places in the United States where indigenous life is allowed to continue without outside interference. For those hoping to visit, the answer is almost always no. Without an invitation from the Robinsons or a special federal reason to go there, it will remain forever out of reach. Number 5. French Strategic Submarine Base. Hidden on a remote peninsula in Brittany, France, lies one of the most secure military facilities in Western Europe, the French Strategic Submarine Base. This site serves as the home port for France's fleet of nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines, the core of the country's nuclear deterrence strategy. What happens inside there is shielded by a veil of military secrecy. This base was originally built during the late 1960s as part of France's move towards an independent nuclear deterrence strategy. During the Cold War, President Charles de Gaulle made the decision to create a force de frappe, a French nuclear strike force that would operate independently of NATO. To that end, the area was transformed to a fortified harbor for submarines, capable of launching long-range nuclear missiles. Despite the isolation, though, the base is hardly low-tech or outdated. It's surrounded by multi-layered security systems, including restricted airspace, high fences, and electronic surveillance. The waters around the peninsula are patrolled, and any unauthorized vessels or drones are intercepted or destroyed. The base isn't only home to the submarines themselves, but they also house advanced maintenance facilities and missile loading docks. Each of the submarines stationed here is capable of launching up to 16 M51 nuclear missiles, which are kept in high-security bunkers with the site. Satellite imagery can confirm the layout of the harbor and the presence of submarines, but many key facilities are built underground or camouflaged to avoid detection. Locals in Brittany know of its presence, but they rarely discuss it openly. There have been public debates in France about the ethics and necessity of maintaining a nuclear force, but the details of how the base operates are never part of those conversations. Even elected officials have limited insight into the day-to-day operations here. The base remains operational 24/7, year-round. Its submarines rotate on long-term deterrent patrols, usually lasting about 70 to 90 days at sea, during which they remain undetectable in the deep water. It's estimated that at least one submarine is always on patrol, while the others undergo maintenance or training cycles. In a global environment increasingly shaped by cyber threats and rising geopolitical tension, bases like this one have become more important than ever to the defense posture of major powers. Yet despite the importance, the site remains in the shadows. There's no civilian eyes inside the perimeter, and whatever happens behind its electrified fences and radar towers remains firmly in the realm of military secrecy. Number 4. Mauna Kea Observatories in Hawaii. Sitting on top of a 13,000-foot summit of Mauna Kea on the Big Island of Hawaii is one of the world's most advanced and important astronomical facilities. The Mauna Kea observatories are operated by a collection of international institutions and space agencies, housing over a dozen cutting-edge telescopes used for deep space observation. But while the mountain itself is open to the public, access to these observatories at the summit is tightly restricted, and not just for scientific reasons. To enter the telescope domes or even the research facilities, you've got to receive government clearance, university approval, or institutional permission. Visitors cannot simply walk in and look around. Behind the doors of each observatory are millions of dollars worth of sensitive optics, experimental instrumentation, and international scientific research. Even researchers who work on the mountain undergo training to handle the delicate systems and adhere to specific protocols. But what makes it so controversial and so unique is the location. The The summit is sacred to native Hawaiians, considered the meeting place of heaven and earth. The construction of observatories there has sparked decades of protests and legal battles. In recent years, demonstrations over the proposed 30-meter telescope, the TMT, has drawn global attention, leading to major blockades that prevented access to the summit for months. In addition to the cultural restrictions, environmental protection measures further limit access. The summit is home to rare plants and animals, and the harsh high-altitude environment is vulnerable to disruption. The telescopes themselves require low humidity, minimal light pollution, and air clarity that can only be preserved by keeping the public out. Many of the observatories are operated in collaboration with agencies like NASA, the National Science Foundation, and foreign governments, including Japan and Canada. As such, those facilities are protected both as intellectual property and national security assets. Some observatories, like the Subaru Telescope or the W.M. Keck Observatory, contain equipment so sensitive that vibrations from foot traffic or temperature shifts could disrupt the entire research mission. Despite all the restrictions, though, Mauna Kea remains one of the most scientifically valuable observatory sites on Earth. Research conducted here has led to breakthroughs in understanding of black holes, star formations, and the early universe. But this knowledge comes at a price of limited access, intense political debate, and high security protocols. For the general public, this summit is a place they can look, but never really truly enter. The secrets of the universe may be revealed on this mountaintop, but they're revealed behind locked doors. Number 3. The Site R, Raven Rock, Pennsylvania. Beneath the mountains along the Pennsylvania-Maryland border in the United States is one of the most secretive and fortified government installations, the Raven Rock Mountain Complex, better known by its code name, Site R. Built into the granite heart of Raven Rock Mountain, this facility has been described as a backup Pentagon, a place from which the United States government could continue to operate in the event of a catastrophic emergency. And unlike Area 51, Site R doesn't feed on speculation or pop culture. It feeds on silence. Entries restricted to an elite cadre of cleared personnel, and what goes on inside remains shrouded in layers of classified protection. Site R was conceived during the height of the Cold War paranoia, as the U.S. government realized that Washington, D.C. was vulnerable to a Soviet nuclear strike. A number of hardened underground bunkers was developed to ensure continuity of operations. The construction began in 1951, and by the mid-50s it was operational, an entire subterranean city carved into the mountainside. The whole thing has living quarters, data centers, command facilities, power gen stations, even its own water reservoirs, everything needed to support hundreds of government and military personnel. But beneath the unremarkable terrain is a massive series of tunnels and chambers built to withstand nuclear shock waves and electromagnetic pulses. It's not designed to protect the people inside, but to allow them to launch countermeasures. Inside Site R, alternate chains of command are established. Communications are maintained, and if necessary, orders of national consequence could be issued, entirely underground. Site R was thrust briefly into the public eye on September 11, 2001, when Vice President Dick Cheney was reportedly evacuated to a secure, undisclosed location. Many experts believe that Site R was that location, and since then, speculation around its importance in modern American defense has only intensified. As technological warfare evolves, so does Site R. This complex has undergone multiple upgrades over the decades, adapting to cyber warfare threats, drone surveillance, and much more. It's not just a relic of Cold War contingency planning, it's a living part of the United States' secret emergency command structure. It even has connections to other continuity of government sites, including the Mount Weather and Cheyenne Mountain. While Area 51 feeds those conspiracy theories, Site R just quietly stays operational, real, restricted, and still ready. For most Americans, it's little more than a name on a classified document. But to those cleared to walk through its blast-proof corridors, Site R represents the nation's last resort control room, buried in stone and secrecy. Number 2. Camp Century Tunnels in Greenland. Deep beneath the thick Greenlandic ice sheets, frozen in time, lie the remains of a Cold War-era U.S. military installation that was once billed as a cutting-edge scientific research facility. Known as Camp Century, this hidden outpost was far more than it appeared. Behind its science facade was a covert military project called Project Iceworm, a daring attempt to install nuclear missile launch sites underneath the Arctic ice, all completely concealed from the Soviet Union. Built in 1959 during heightened tensions, Camp Century was established by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers with official public goals of studying glaciology and Arctic construction. The Danish government, which technically administered Greenland, was reportedly unaware of the camp's true military intentions. In reality, the U.S. was testing whether a network of hundreds of nuclear missiles could be hidden in mobile launchers beneath the ice. Camp Century was an engineering challenge. The facility was built within a grid of tunnels excavated from the ice, stretching over a mile in length. It included sleeping quarters, a hospital, a theater, and even a chapel. Yet, despite the freezing conditions and treacherous logistics, the camp functioned for several years, a surreal and secretive city below the ice. Project Iceworm, however, proved unsustainable. Engineers discovered that the ice was way more unstable than predicted. The tunnels warped and shifted too quickly for long-term viability, and by 1966, Camp Century was abandoned. The public wouldn't learn of Project Iceworm's full scope until its documents were declassified decades later, causing major diplomatic tension between Denmark and the U.S. Though no longer active, Camp Century's legacy continues to raise the alarm. Researchers warn that melting ice from climate change could soon expose the site and all of its residual waste. This could include radioactive coolant, diesel fuel, sewage, and even toxic PCBs. A kind of ticking time bomb of Cold War secrecy may one day resurface from its frozen grave. Scientific teams studying Arctic ice cores in the area operate under tight regulations, and there's little transparency on what they may have found. What began as a political gamble beneath the ice has become one of the most mysterious and off-limits ruins of American military ambition. The remnants of Camp Century remained locked in glacial silence. A Cold War experiment that literally disappeared beneath the surface, and yet it may one day thaw into a dangerous revelation. Number 1. China's secret mega command center. On the outskirts of Beijing, China is building what is believed to be the largest military command facility on Earth, a complex that dwarfs even the Pentagon scale. Satellite imagery has revealed a massive, highly secured site with military architecture unlike anything previously seen. While the Chinese government remains silent about its true purpose, defense analysts, intelligence agencies, and independent satellite researchers have pieced together a disturbing picture. This is likely the People's Liberation Army's, the PLA's, new central command, and possibly a future headquarters for its entire warfighting structure, buried deep underground. The site, which began appearing in commercial satellite images in recent years, covers a huge area of over 1.2 million square meters, making it 10 times larger than the Pentagon. Construction activity, especially between 2017 and 2022, has included reinforced concrete structures, wide roads capable of supporting heavy military transport, camouflaged ventilation units, and huge cleared areas for defense perimeters. China has a long history of building subterranean military infrastructure, from Cold War-era projects like Beijing's underground city to the thousands of kilometers of what the Pentagon calls the underground Great Wall, a network of tunnels to conceal and protect its nuclear arsenal. But this new facility seems to go way beyond that. It's not just a storage site or an emergency fallback shelter. Based on its layout and positioning near Beijing, analysts believe it as a strategic command center, one designed to run military operations during peace and nuclear war alike. Public access is, of course, impossible. The area surrounding the site is restricted with no-fly zones and ground patrols. Even the official Chinese press has avoided coverage of the facility. The construction of a hardened super bunker this close to the capital suggests a desire to preserve political and military leadership in the event of a sudden attack. But what makes that even more alarming is the timing. China's rapid military modernization, combined with growing tensions over Taiwan, the South China Sea, and increasing confrontations with the United States, points to an era of strategic preparation. Building a nuclear-hardened central command facility, potentially impervious to preemptive strikes, is a sign that the PLA is preparing for worst-case scenarios. And unlike older command centers in the US or Russia that were developed during the Cold War and have since been partially decommissioned, China's facility is brand new, a product of 21st century planning, digital warfare considerations, and emerging battlefield technology like hypersonic missiles, drones, and cyber attacks. Disguised entrances and sophisticated air filtration structures suggest the complex may support thousands of personnel, possibly in complete isolation for extended periods. Rumors from defense circles have even suggested that there may be multiple underground levels, complete with living quarters, command centers, and weapons storage. While the full capability of this new site remains classified, one thing is certain: no outsider is ever going to walk through its gates. The complex remains under strict military control, with advanced surveillance and security tech ensuring total exclusion from the public. Even the satellite imagery available to the open-source researchers shows signs of intentional obfuscation, such as disguised infrastructure and active jamming of aerial reconnaissance. In a world where nations continue to rely on subterranean architecture to shield their most important secrets, China's new megastructure may be the most ambitious military command center ever built. It is real, active, and growing, an enormous black box in the hills outside Beijing, off limits to everyone except a very select few. Whatever's happening under there, beneath that mountain, is meant to remain hidden from the world.